Welcome. The following program will begin shortly.
I wonder if God got a plan for everyone. I wonder if I could take a second run. 'Cause I carry on getting sad and getting stuck. What I wouldn't give for a life that doesn't suck. I'm a moving target. I never finish what I've started. I'm a moving target. But if I stop moving, then I'll have to face myself. I don't wanna face myself. I don't wanna face myself. I don't wanna face myself. I wonder if God got better things to do than take pity on a man who's looking for something new. I know I shouldn't wanna be a special case, but I'm running away from the fears I have to face. I'm a moving target. I never finish what I've started. I'm a moving target. But if I stop moving, then I'll have to face myself. Whoa, 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 yeah. I'm a moving target. I never finish what I've started. Kinda makes me wish I never started.
The program is about to begin.
But if I stop moving, then I'll have to face myself. I don't wanna face myself. I don't wanna face myself. I don't wanna face myself. No, I don't wanna face myself. I don't wanna face myself. I don't wanna face myself.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Terrors of Toxic Masculinity. My name is J.C. Carlson. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am the LGBTQIA+ Programs Coordinator at Queens College. This event is being recorded. Please take the next few moments to adjust your cameras and screen names if you need to. Before we begin, I would like to thank LaGuardia Community College and the New York City Council through the offices of Daniel Drum in District 25 and Speaker Corey Johnson for their continued and generous support. In addition, I would like to thank our co-sponsors, the Women and Gender Studies program at Queens College, the CUNY Office of Student Inclusion Initiatives, the Office of Student Development and Leadership at Queens College, the Gender Love and Sexuality Alliance at Queens College, also known as GLOSSA, and of course, Connect Commune. Again, welcome to the Terrors of Toxic Masculinity. We are ready to begin. Today's diverse panel, led by our event partner, Connect Commune, will focus on the toxicity of hyper-masculinity and its impact on relationships, human interactions, mental and physical health, and perceptions of women and LGBTQIA+ folks. Today's discussion format is as follows. Our panelists will weigh in on today's topic, after which we will open the floor for questions. We will end today's program with a special performance by queer recording artist and activist On Yellow. Our panel moderator, well, she's an editor for Salty Magazine. She is a model and also an advocate of equal rights for trans and non-binary individuals. She pursues social equality through her writing, public speaking, and philanthropy, devoting her efforts to the Persist for Peace initiative. She is the executive director of Connect Commune, which is the mental health component of Persist for Peace. I turn the microphone over to our panel moderator, Jaja McQueen.
Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. And I'd like to extend a special thank you to J.C. Carlson and the Office of Student Development and Leadership for being instrumental in helping make this event possible. So a little context about what we're going to talk about, toxic masculinity. Masculinity is not toxic, but enforcing it is. Why? Because the internal struggles that enforced masculinity create grows and festers into negative physical behaviors that affect other people. For example, long ago, I had a friend named Shamal, and we were so close. We were born in the same hospital on the same day. We went to the same middle school and high school, and we even joined the military together. We both grew up with fathers that said things to us like, I'm not raising you to be no faggot, excuse my language, underscored by moments like one time my father bust my lip to emphasize that point. These verbal and physical aggressions went on to manifest as various psychological traumas for Shamal and me. The key difference between us was, sadly, Shamal succumbed to those traumas when he committed suicide. And that's what this conversation and my company are all about. Finding those commonalities, identifying traumas and exploring them, and expanding conversation, so that hopefully things that will happen to Shamal won't happen to more people. So let's get into it. I'm joined here today by Talk Sweet therapist Melissa Stanger, actor and performer Tyler Modell, and acclaimed singer-songwriter Aniello, as well as 3 CUNY students some of you may already know. Mason Falco, Luis Alvarez, and Andre Benjamin. I'll let each of them tell you a little more about themselves, starting with Junior.
Hello, everyone. My name is Junior Luis Alvarez. I go to Bronx Community College. My major is education. When I go to Hunter, I want to switch over to psychology. I am a student with a disability. I am gay, and I am the chairperson for the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities. My pronouns is his, him, and he.
Thank you. And Andre Benjamin.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Andre again. My major is accounting, and I'm also pursuing a minor in econ. My pronouns are he, him, and a little bit about me. I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, which you will soon hear influenced my thinking and reasoning a lot. I'm also the current president for National Association for Black Accountants and a member of the Queens College Student Association. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And Mason Falco, what about you?
Hey everyone, my name is Mason Falco. I am a bisexual trans man. My pronouns are he, him, or they, them. I am a student at Queens College. I'm majoring in psychology, hoping to get into the school psychology graduate program.
Nice. And next, let's hear from Melissa Stanger.
Hi, my name is Melissa Stanger. I'm a social worker. I identify as queer. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I got my master's in social work at CUNY Hunter. I'm now currently practicing in private practice part-time at a group psychotherapy practice called the Talk Suite. I also work with the elderly at an assisted living facility, and in my very limited spare time, I'm continuing my studies in psychotherapy and psychoanalysis at the Training Institute for Mental Health.
Wow, awesome. And Tyler, how about you?
Hello, my name is Tyler Modell. I am a singer, dancer, model, and actor. My pronouns are they, them, she, her, and I'm currently residing in San Antonio, Texas during this pandemic with my family. And I am just so thankful to be here and to talk about this important subject and message, and hopefully start some communication and healing.
We're thankful for having you, and I hope you're keeping warm with what's going on over there.
Oh, yeah.
So, and finally, Aniello.
Hello, my name is Aniello Schiavelli. I am a New York City-based singer, songwriter, actor. I'm honored to be part of this conversation. I identify as he, him, his, and I'm also from Queens, so it's really nice to be on a panel with others from the Queens College space. So thanks for having me.
All right, representing Queens.
Yes, for sure.
So, yeah, we can get right into the questions. I think the way that some people deal with toxic masculinity really depends on the way that it presents to them in any certain case. So, and sometimes we're bombarded with it when we're young, and sometimes we don't really even encounter it until we're older. So I'll just kick this off to anyone that wants to answer. You know, we're taught from a young age how to view the world, and the lessons continue as we go older. How was gender established for you, and when?
I can answer that. So I grew up in a military conservative Christian family. And so right from the beginning, there was that binary set mentality, that heteronormative mentality set from the very beginning. Men do this, women do that. And especially as military family and a Christian family, the gender roles were important for the run of the environment. So in the military, you had, you know, men could perform certain roles. Women, even though they could be admitted into the military, they couldn't do a lot of the roles that the men could do because they weren't strong enough or they didn't have the capacity to perform them. And even in the church that I go to, it's very, very traditional, it's very conservative to the point that women aren't allowed to have any type of leadership roles in the presence of a man. And so it was very structured from the very beginning of my life to almost like men are better, you know, men can do more, women are lesser, and their only roles are to, you know, help their man, support their man, and to, you know, bear children.
Wow. Aniello, I saw you raise your hand.
I mean, just to add on to that, and wow, I didn't even know that, Tyler. Just to add on to that, growing up in a Catholic, I'm first generation Italian American, and grew up with similar kind of like traditional Catholic background. But I felt that even though I was kind of thrown into like what my parents thought, you know, should be for my gender role, I kind of swam through them in my own way and like kind of reform them or relabel them to what I wanted them to be. And I think I was lucky for my parents to see that and allow that. So for example, I was signed up for soccer by 6 years old. And when I was on the soccer field, although like, you know, it's a great sport, I sang to myself on the soccer field. And it was just something that got me through this experience that I wasn't necessarily enjoying. My dad was a really big soccer fan. But when they saw that there was this interest of like, okay, maybe this isn't for him, I have to say that I was also lucky to then pivot into kind of a role that fit a little bit more. So that's just a little of like kind of my upbringing with it.
Okay. And Junior, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so gender for me, it came late in life. I was lucky to have a family where if I wanted to play with Barbies, they let me play with Barbies. If I wanted to put on makeup, they let me put on makeup. My mother was really, really that type of person that you are who you are, disability, gay, whatever you are, she accepts you for who you are, you know? So I was lucky in that sense, but I was homeschooled due to my disability. When I started going to, I guess, high school outside the house, that's where gender really hit me, where they were like, why do you have eyeliner on? And I'm like, because it makes my eyes pop like firecrackers. Like, what's your problem? So
Nice.
That's where it started coming, where I found out that males don't do that and females do that. And that's where I was like, that's nonsense to me. I'm going to do what I want to do.
That's awesome. And Melissa, I saw you raise your hand.
Yes. So I'm cisgender female. I'm also a twin. My twin sister is also cisgender. I think gender for us, as well for a lot of people, was established even before our birth, where parents get their, the sex of the baby on the sonogram, and that's when they decide to buy pink or they decide to buy blue, and they make a lot of choices for their children before the child has even had a chance to decide for him, her, themselves. And I think also for me, my parents were very open and accepting of different gender expressions, at least for girls. I wanted to wear boys' clothes when I was growing up. I didn't want to play with dolls. I didn't want to do gymnastics or ballet. I wanted to do karate. They were very welcoming of that, but I think if I had been born male or identified as male, they maybe would not have taken as kindly to it. And I think a lot of parents and a lot of people in general are much more open to accepting different expressions of female identity and a lot less open to accepting different variations and expressions of male identity, which has been a problem for a lot of people.
Yes, it has. And Andre, you wanted to say?
Yeah, personally for me, first time I saw this question, it was really difficult for me because I couldn't figure it out. And it took me some time to realize, because where I'm from Jamaica, and I'm a straight guy. Gender wasn't something, initially, it's not like a one specific moment that, okay, then no, it's here. And I think Melissa best described it just a while ago, where even before we were born, it was already decided that, okay, this is what we are going to be. This is what we're going to do. As boys, we are supposed to be outside. We're supposed to be playing in the dirt. For the girls or for the females, they were supposed to be inside. So in Jamaica, it was like already predestined. And it's just something that we are, and it's like we're born with it. And honestly, the first time I even considered anything outside of what I knew was maybe 4 years ago. And for those who don't know me, I'm pretty old. I'm like 32. I was born in the 80s. So, so like gender for me, I guess it became a thing when I came here 4 years ago.
Okay. So, and how did you respond to that with being, I don't want to say bombarded, but I guess kind of confronted with a different idea than what you knew?
Honestly, I am still trying to figure that out. I have to say thanks to JC and a colleague of mine. I don't think she's on now, but they were instrumental in me kind of starting to ask certain questions, me even being able or feeling comfortable to have certain conversations. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, it's all completely changed. It's not, it's a work in progress. There's still, I still have friends, because I spent 6 years in the military before I came here. And, that whole organization and structure, it is set, it is old, and I don't see that changing. So, me kind of trying to match who I am now, what I've learned now, to the me who, is from Jamaica with Jamaican friends and the mentality of my friends back home. It's difficult because I have to kind of tailor who I am depending on who I'm speaking to. Because my closest friends who I've spent all my life with they're not of the same mindset that I am. So my question is, do I now cut these persons off? What do I do? So it's still a work in progress. I'm still trying to find right mix, the right blend to it.
Yeah, it is hard when others around you haven't experienced the same cultural awakening that you have. So, toxic masculinity is often related to violence against all women and the entire LGBT community. So, do you believe toxic masculinity has resulted in the assault, harassment, and murders of women and LGBT folks? Or have you personally been targeted? If so, how? And I would love for Tyler to weigh in on that.
Sure, yes. So I do believe, because what we have to understand is that toxic masculinity affects everyone. And so, by this, cis men, I'm so glad Andre is here for this, because cisgender men are affected in a lot of ways very similar to how we're affected as trans people and as cis women, but they react to it in a different way. And so the way that they react to it is through violence, is because they are taught that the stronger you are, the more masculine you are, the better you are. And so anytime that they are confronted with something different, anytime that they are challenged by something that they have learned, they don't know how to emotionally and mentally take that in and really understand that we're all different, we're all diverse. And so a lot of times their only recourse is violence. And it's so sad, it's so disheartening, because for us as trans people, for cis women, we get the physical brunt of it. So we're on the news, this person died today, this person's murdered today. But for cisgender men, it's the psychological, it's the mental, and that we don't see all the time. And so they're not getting the proper mental help that they need. I'm so glad that mental health is in the forefront of mainstream society now, because this is part of it. This is part of it. Toxic masculinity affects people psychologically, mentally, in ways that we can't even imagine. And so it definitely does have a physical effect on us, which needs to be addressed and needs to be taken care of. But I think deeper than that, it has a psychological and mental effect on cis men that we need to talk about more and discuss more with.
Yeah. Mason, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, when we talk about toxic masculinity affecting women and the LGBT community, I feel like we have to specifically talk about trans women of color, which are very often overlooked in the media. And you hear about all of these attacks and you hear about all this terrible stuff that's happening, but you never see it on any of the major news or anything like that. And I really do feel like it stems from this internal feeling of this internalized transphobia or homophobia that is taught through toxic masculinity. And that is what results in a lot of these attacks. And I also feel like it also is due to a lot of people putting the attention on the masculine elements of a person first, instead of just looking at the individual and being like, oh, that's a woman, that's they try and put forth these masculine qualities first, to make it, I guess, to kind of justify why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that we touched on with either you, Mason, and you, Tyler, since you answered first, have you ever been personally targeted? Have you experienced violence yourself, or no? Or have you seen it or witnessed it?
I haven't experienced it firsthand, but I've definitely felt very threatened, especially when I first came out as trans. I was very much not passing for a cisgender man. So when it came to using men's restrooms and public restrooms, it was very, very scary for me. It still is to this day, but especially in the very beginning, it was.
As far as physical violence or no, I've never experienced physical, but definitely when I'm in a room of predominantly cis men, it is very intimidating. And I've had, bullies for sure, growing up in high school, especially, being in the gym and being in the locker room, and just, for me, it's like a more of a get in, get out situation. And so and that's when they like to tease and taunt, especially like I wasn't good at sports. I'm still not good at sports. And so that's when they like to bully and tease and things like that. As an adult, surprisingly, it's a lot more with cis gay men than I would say cis straight men. A lot of the cis straight men that are friends of mine are very open and understanding. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that because they are attracted to traditionally female people, that they have a stronger connection with me than maybe a cisgender gay man. And so a cisgender gay man is more so put off by me and threatened by me for different reasons. And so that's something that's been interesting to me too, dealing with that. But as far as physical attack, I've never experienced that.
Okay. And I think I saw Andre's hand up first, and I see the other three people waiting. Andre, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so this is another particularly good question, because this kind of changed my view on toxic masculinity completely. Because for me, toxic masculinity was always defined as a man, not being able to express your emotion. If you're, someone calling you weak, that's all it's ever been for me. And I couldn't connect the dots that, okay, it's not just affected me, but it's also the violence against, women, against the gay community as well. And I sat back and I looked over the last 30 years of my life, and I realized that it has always been there, but for some reason I couldn't see it. And it's in the way we were brought up, as a child, we were saying as a boy, growing up, listen, if you cry, you're weak. If you express emotions, you're soft. You're called a sissy, excuse my language. So the worst thing for us growing up in Jamaica was, having emotions. And, your parents, would say to your father, my father always say, yeah, girl, you can't ball. So because of that, I didn't cry. I don't cry. Then it took me back to something that happened a couple months ago. A friend of mine was getting married and he was in tears. And it was the most uncomfortable moment for me. And then I realized that I'm not the kind of person who knows how to deal with tears, who knows how to deal with emotions. And this just kind of just changed my entire perspective on this entire toxic masculinity.
Wow, okay. And Aniello, I see your hand up. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak for myself in the sense where in my experience, I was personally a victim of physical abuse in junior high school from bullies, and was physically attacked for, at the time, not even identifying with being gay, but just being a kid who was, I was probably 11 or 12, and followed outside of school and was just physically beat up. And my friend who was there, who was my dear friend, who may even be in this room, was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And he was like, because he's a faggot. And at 11 or 12 years old, to be honest, I actually didn't identify as a gay male even at that moment. I was still, exploring who I was as a person. So for that to happen, it was just not only traumatic, but it also showed this toxic masculinity that the bully grew up with, and that he, found the need to hurt me for it. And as a young kid, I was embarrassed to even share that with my mom. I didn't want to tell anyone. My friend kind of like told me to tell the school dean, and I was scared because the next day, him and his friends were like, oh, if he tells, we're going to do it again. And so aside from him having a lot of issues himself, I'm sure, it also kind of showed me that, or accidentally told me that it was bad for being gay, or that being gay is a bad thing, so you get beat up for it. And I think that really kind of like slowed down the growth process for me, even kind of just, you know, setting into my own, you know, sexuality, or just like, you know, being for something like that. And, you know, I was blessed to be able to attend a performing arts high school after junior high, and I found my niche and I found my people, and, you know, that was an amazing experience. But before that, definitely bullying and physical abuse. And, you know, I look back and I'm like, I just feel bad for someone that does that to people. It's just, yeah, it's insane.
That's good, and it's really important, and I'm glad that you were able to really simplify and articulate the base form of that enforced masculinity. When you realize, oh, being gay, bad, I get beat up. No, you know, it's so simple and raw, and it kind of like translates like that. No matter how we experience or how it presents, it always kind of simplifies into that one base thing, like this. You know, this action bad, and it gets this reaction. And I'm sorry, Melissa, I see your hand up.
Yeah, no worries. I also want to thank everyone so far for sharing their experiences. It's been very enlightening. I would say from a mental health perspective and a societal perspective, you know, there have been studies that show that the majority of crimes and violent crimes are committed by cisgender men, and the majority of victims of violent crimes are also men, cisgender, transgender. And I think that really serves to highlight, you know, that toxic masculinity is both detrimental to women and to victims of violent crime, which are often men themselves. So it becomes this perpetuating cycle of violence, you know, for everyone, and especially men. And a lot of men, I think, don't realize how harmful toxic masculinity can be for themselves. They think it's, you know, yes, it's harmful for others, but, you know, but not for me, because I'm one of the strong ones. I think it's also, you know, fair to say for women, and I can only speak to my own experience as a cis woman. You know, I was even thinking about, you know, coming home to my office today. You know, I was catcalled on the way here. It happens all day, every day for women, and I'm sure for trans women and you know, LGBTQ people. But you know, even though it's not physical violence, it's the threat of violence, and that can be very scary and can build into this trauma response over time.
Right. And Junior, what did you want to add?
So when I was in high school, I had a bully, right? And he broke a bottle on my head, a glass bottle on my head. Later to come out to find that he himself was gay. The fact that made it different was that I was so feminine. And that upset him because his father was in the army. His father has these preconceived notions of what a man was, and was pushing it on his son. And his son, which is now one of my really close friends, funny, and like really like went out there and took a bottle and hit me because I was putting lip gloss on. So it goes to that toxicness where we're talking about that masculinity. It is not toxic. It is what you do with it. When you're teaching children that they shouldn't cry because they're a boy, or they shouldn't do this because they're a boy. Gender is a learned item. So like, let them choose who they want to be. That's where always it comes down to, because you might look one way and be completely different, and that's okay. As long as your child's healthy or whatever, you shouldn't teach toxicness. It's wrong.
Yeah, and it's so ironic that you were assaulted by someone, you know, in the community, and it actually goes to another question. And Tyler brought up the same thing about, you know, interacting with cisgender gay males. And yeah, I wanted to ask, do you all think that toxic masculinity exists in the LGBT community, and how does it exist, and how is it perpetuated? And I'll volunteer one thought, and I don't know if we're all familiar with this term as bottom shaming, but I'll let you all elaborate at your leisure. So either Junior, Tyler, can you expound it? Because you already kind of touched on it before, so I wanted to let you expound on that too.
Sure. I do think there's toxic masculinity in our community. And that's where there's a problem in our community, where there is bottom shaming, or there is femme shaming, there is size shaming. There's so much shaming in the community. And that's always the problem, because in our community, we created this community to feel together, to feel included, right? And we're just hurting each other because we don't fit a criteria. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a gym bunny or something. I like to eat, but it is what it is. It doesn't make me less of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so hurt people, number one. And number two, my friend and I came up with this phrase, and we call it the prodigal son syndrome. And if you don't know about the prodigal son was a parable that Jesus told, where essentially he leaves his father, does all these crazy things, and then he is so ashamed to come back home that he is willing to eat the slobs with the pigs, just to be in his father's good graces. And so we call it the prodigal son syndrome because a lot of times these cisgender gay men, most predominantly white, as far as in the out community, they've never experienced persecution. They never experienced being biased until they came out as gay. And so it's a shock to them, and they don't know what to do. And they're trying so hard to be in the good graces of their family, of the community, of, the world. That's why as LGBTQ people, we're some of the hardest working people, we're some of the most successful people, because we're trying so hard to prove to society, to prove to our parents, to prove to these people that told us that we weren't worthy, that we are worthy, but we do it in such toxic ways. And so when people see me or Junior or anyone else who's femme, who's trans, non-binary, who is a threat, it's in their eyes, they have to react, and what they're really reacting to, and Melissa can maybe expound upon this maybe more, but what they're really reacting to is someone pointed out, internalized homophobia, internalized transphobia. It's they had to suppress that portion of them. And by them seeing you not suppressing it, they don't know how to take it. It angers them because that was a part of them that they felt was lost and that they cannot get back, for one reason or another. And so they see you and they're jealous and they're upset. And it's like, no, if I'm suffering, you're going to suffer too. And it's just, and that's something that's prevalent in this country is that if I suffer, you suffer, and instead of like trying to help and trying to heal and trying to pay it forward, but for sure, toxic masculinity is deep within the gay community. And the problem is that we don't talk enough about it. We point fingers at cis hetero men, but the fingers need to be pointed in our community as well and really discussed.
I'm glad that you touched on that too, about like a lot of people don't really either acknowledge or maybe not even know how to identify the cognitive dissonance that occurs in people. But I wanted to give Aniello a chance to speak. I saw your hand up.
Tyler really hit on a lot of the points that I was even thinking about, but within the gay community, there's definitely, femme shaming, as you said, and I've caught myself kind of trying to live up to these different standards when it comes to masculinity, in the sense of even, you know, sometimes in the gay community, you're like more desirable if you're masculine, or, you know, I mean, it's all preference, but that's so toxic itself, because we're all trying to do our best, and we're all trying to, you know, we should be supporting each other within the community. So pointing these fingers and dividing within this, you know, community is toxic itself. So I think there's definitely you know, toxic masculinity in the community for sure.
Yeah. And Melissa, I see you. What can you add? And maybe you can speak to the cognitive dissonance that I mentioned too, if you can, I don't know, enlighten us on give us a professional input on that.
Yeah, so the first thing that came to mind when everyone was speaking was about body ideals, and how body image is so, for a lot of people, intimately tied with gender and gender expression. And I've worked with a number of clients who are trans or gender nonconforming, who are very ashamed that their given body doesn't match who they feel they are, or they feel like their body needs to look the way that they feel other people might desire them more. And it's created eating disorders, it's created body dysmorphia, it's created a lot of mental and physical health issues that end up becoming really detrimental for years and years. And it's only through processing, you know, with a therapist, with a nutritionist, you know, with friends and other people in the community who are able to offer support, and also offer other examples of what it is to be trans or gender nonconforming, that there isn't just one way, that you don't have to, if you don't want to look, you know, cisgender, if you don't want to pass, that's okay. That doesn't negate your transness or your gender nonconformingness. And yeah, I mean, it definitely stems from toxic masculinity for sure.
Yeah. And I wanted to pose this question to Andre, and I would also love to hear Mason's feedback on it too, is have you internally gauged the masculinity levels of other men? And what are factors that would diminish or increase their masculinity in your eyes? Like, what would make them more of a man to you, or less of? And did it affect the way that you treat them, and why?
All right, so the answer to that question is yes, I have, and I've even done it to my brothers. I'm the oldest of five. I have two younger brothers and two younger sisters, and so there's this one particular brother that I'm not really close to, and just the other day I was, you know, even talking to a friend of mine about it, and the reason why we're not close is because growing up, he was nothing like me, in the sense of how I, you know, dealt and treated the women in my life. I was not the nicest person, you know, to put it in a nice way. And my brother was nothing like that. You know, he preferred to stay home, watch TV. He didn't seem interested. And you know, most of the comments to him was, "What's wrong with you? You gay? Well, you don't like women?" Or, you know, it was nothing nice. And you know, that kind of stems from, which, thinking about it now, were questions that were asked to me by a friend of mine, like in the 7th grade. You know, back then I wasn't really too interested in girls either, but you know, growing up in Jamaica, you know, some of the guys were pretty much already having sex by the time they're in high school, even before that, long before that. Me, not so much. So, you know, that question was asked to me, so are you gay? So then right then and then I realized that, okay, you know, you don't want to be gay growing up in Jamaica, because that was always a bad thing. It's the worst thing to be. And if somebody call you that, I mean, them these fighting words, and you know, so you do whatever you have to do, so they don't call you that. So I kind of changed my personality, you know, so that didn't happen again. And then I did that for my brother as well, which, thinking about it now, I'm kind of regretful, you know. Oh, sorry for doing that. So I've done it, and you know, I've used that to judge the masculinity of other men. I've also used the whole emotion stuff because, like I said, I'm not, I'm not an emotional person. So if you're emotional, then you're female, you're feminine, you're a sissy. And sadly, I've also done that to my brother as well. He seemed to be very emotional. So
Wow.
yeah, like I said, I'm a work in progress. There's a lot of things that I've done that I'm not particularly proud of right now, and majority of the stuff that I've even done is not even things that I'm even in agreement with. It's you do this or else kind of situation. I've answered your question. I think I went off.
No,
A
you
little bit.
really did, and actually, you brought up an important thing too about the emotional aspect of it, because and going back to being embedded with these things at a young age, I'll never forget. I mean, and we probably witnessed this, especially Black and brown folks. But it recently happened about maybe a year ago. Just outside of my window, I heard a kid and he was crying, and his mom was just like, "Stop crying! Are you stop crying like a little girl?" And it's so. And right then and there, in that moment, and she threatened him. She was like, "Well, I'm gonna give you something to cry about. I should punch you in your face," is what she told him. And it was a little like a toddler. And I wanted to go down and fight her, but I was like, I'm gonna mind my business. But yeah, it goes to the same thing of like right then and there, that kid, and we are as kids, then attach, emotion to weakness and a negative consequence, right? And so it just is really crazy that how it then perpetuates and cycles throughout our adult life. So I'm sorry, Mason, I wanted to get your feedback too.
I definitely gauge the masculinity levels of other men like all the time. I think for me, it's more of like, is this how I should be presenting myself? Is this how I should be acting? Because I'm still trying to like navigate the world and my space as a man in this world and where I stand. I grew up being seen as a woman and being seen as female for about like 20, 21 years of my life. And now all of a sudden people see me as a man and they see me as a male. And the switch is very weird for me because I can't approach people the way I used to as a woman. Certain groups I can't like go up to anymore. And it's the weirdest thing for me. And I think what for me personally factors that like increase masculinity in my own eyes is someone's ability to command a circle or command a group. Just because when people saw me as a woman, I feel like my voice wasn't really heard too much, like especially in a big group. And now I feel like I'm heard more, which I don't know why it is that way, but it is. Also for me, like drinking beer is another one. I don't know what it is. Like for me, like I like fruity drinks, you know what I'm saying? Like little cocktails. And whenever I see like these dudes at the bar drinking like beers and stuff, I'm just like, I don't know, like I get so intimidated by it. Like, I don't know, it's like the little things like that, like really like be like, oh, like that's a dude right there. Like, let me not go up to him. But yeah.
Trust me, I understand. Before I transitioned, and it was mentioned before, like being in the gay club and you order, a big old fruity drink, and you have what I like to call the bow tie gays are like, look at her. So, but actually, Mason, you touched on exactly something that I wanted to ask too, which was, has the policing of masculinity ever restricted your access from specific places, and how did that make you feel?
Who, me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So for a long time before I came out, I identified as a lesbian and I was very in touch with that term. And now, that term doesn't really apply to me anymore, right? And that's a community I'm no longer a part of, which was a very weird concept for me to grasp because that's the community that started me on my journey of queer love and queer discovery. And now that's no longer, like I see like, like lesbian TikToks and things like that, right? And like, I'm not a part of that community anymore, right? And it's very weird being now a part of the gay male community, because a lot of the time, people don't see trans men as like, if a trans man identifies as gay, they don't see them as an actual gay male. So it's very weird trying to like navigate which communities I'm a part of or what communities I can like associate myself with, because I'm still very much attracted to women. I'm attracted to all genders. But it's like the lesbian community, it doesn't, I'm not a part of it anymore. And it's just, I guess I've been policed in that way from that community based on my identity.
And Melissa, you have something to add?
Yeah, it was funny, Mason, when you mentioned beer, because I'm a big craft beer fan, and I used to be a journalist, and I would write about craft beer. I would brew beer, and being in those spaces was very, very male dominated, and I would get, mansplained about beer all the time by people who, I knew. I'm like, they don't know as much about beer as I do, or they don't know that I know as much about beer as I actually do, because I'm a woman. So they make assumptions about me. Oh, you're gonna like this beer because it's fruity. Oh, you're gonna, just be careful. This beer's really sour. It's a sour beer. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I ordered it. And trying to assert myself in those spaces was really difficult, because, and I'm sure a lot of people have this kind of experience in other spaces. You feel like you have to work twice as hard to prove that you belong there. And sometimes, and then maybe this is just for me, I do some things out of spite, just to, challenge people's notions of gender, or challenge people's notions of me as an individual. Like, yeah, I'll drink this IPA. Like, oh yeah, it's 11%, like chug. No, I'm not gonna actually chug it, but to try to show that you don't know me, you don't know who I am, and maybe you should challenge yourself. This is me to other people. Maybe you should challenge yourself on other notions that you might have about gender as well, because you'll be surprised, and sometimes unpleasantly so, in life.
Yeah. So, and I want to not acknowledge Aniela before we start to take questions from our guests. So, Aniela, I see your hand up. What did you want to say?
On the topic of policing, I've been, like all of us here, an example for me of policing growing up was, trying to get into the music industry, and the recording industry side is very was, at least when I was growing up, late 90s, early 2000s, it was really sort of just, white male dominated on the executive side. And, even on the studio side, when it came to getting in sessions with other, engineers and mixing people, and I was this kind of young feminine kid that was writing songs and recording music. And I remember taking one of my first meetings with a major record label, and the executive listened to the song called New Day and told me flat out that New Day was too gay. And it was too campy, and it was too gay. And I was like this, young kid that just thought it was, one of my best things ever. And I remember that kind of like hitting this thing of like, okay, so now I need to be more masculine. Now I need to be something else. And my song is too gay. And it really messes with your mind. And then I'd take another meeting, and they would say, the girls are gonna love you. We're gonna package this up. The girls are gonna love you. And, it just kind of goes to show that that's where their head was. And that was like, part of their marketing thing, but that also showed me how much work there is to do. And I think a lot has, we've kind of paved a way since then, but how much work there is to do when it comes to companies, and what media thinks we should be, and what record labels think, their artists should be, and how they want to market them. And I made a promise to myself to always kind of be true in every meeting and say, well, this is who I am. And, I don't want to be marketed that way. So I'm not gonna, partner with you. So just, that was my example from growing up where, you know, I was seeing those things happen over and over.
Yeah. So I want to thank all of you. Thank you so much for participating today and offering your insight. And now we're going to open up the floor to our guests to ask any questions that they feel are appropriate to ask. And does anyone have, oh, Robin?
Hi. So I'm also from the Caribbean, and I was curious. My question is for Andre. I noticed your wedding ring, and I see the kid stuff in the back, and I was wondering your newfound awareness of the toxic masculine traits and gender role stereotypes that you learned over the years. How do they affect your relationships now? Like your newfound awareness, how do they affect the relationships you have with people now?
Good question. So just maybe 2 days ago, a few days ago, someone told me that I'm a very toxic individual, and as hard as that was to hear, it is very much true. And what I've done is I've tried to unlearn some of the stuff that that I was taught, and I have to be completely honest. It's not the easiest thing to do because some of these things are so ingrained. It is second nature to me. As Jaja said when she told her story about that woman and her kid. I do that to my daughters without even thinking. And the weirdest thing, but I have 2 daughters. So I'm like, when you cry for your girl, and then I stop myself because this is what I kept hearing growing up. So it's so ingrained in me that it's second nature. And so some of the times I gotta pull back. And and sometimes unfortunately I do things and I say things before I even think about it. But one of the biggest things for me now is being, able to apologize and say, listen, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for what I've said. So that are some of the ways that I've been trying to kind of curb who I want to say who I am, but honestly, who I am depends on who I'm around, unfortunately, because I got to tailor my personality some of the times. But that's how I deal with it, and that's how I'm trying to, change or unlearn some of the stuff that I've been forced upon me.
And can I just interject a point? Because I have to come in, Andre, too, and I have to say that the vulnerability of personal accountability, I feel like makes you more of a man than actual, unrelenting strength and the absence of emotion. So I can really commend you on being self-aware of the gaps in your actions and where you need to grow. But I'm sorry, JC, do we have any questions in the chat?
I'm sorry, not yet, Jaja. I'll let you know.
Okay.
I think someone has their hand up.
Yeah, Leandro, I see you wanted to tell us something.
Hi everyone from Argentina, Buenos Aires, Latin America. I'm here hearing you all. You made me think about a lot of things. And some of the things that I've been taking notes about hearing you all is that these all are thought patterns that we keep repeating. And I think like language is changing. We are living in a language revolution right now. And when we talk about our families, our parents, and that kind of things, I think that they are victims of victims. That's what they've learned, and we have to change all of that cycle. And actually, I think that, of course, toxic masculinity affects us all, and perhaps a straight cis male cannot connect with their wives, their sisters, their mothers, their daughters. I mean, they cannot connect because they cannot connect with themselves. So all of the things that Andre is saying are really powerful to all of us. And I also think that masculinity and femininity is something that we act on it. And most this is something deep, I think, right? But males perform and men's perform to other men's. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there is a performative act to other men's as woman keeping an eye on other women. You know, this is something that society taught us to do. And that's what happened when you transition, actually, right? I think that trans men gain privilege and trans women lose privilege that they used to have, perhaps. So that's the thing that when this other person was saying, I don't remember his name, about the beer and I don't belong to the lesbian community anymore, is because when you transition, I think, to you gain privilege. And that's the thing that we need to keep in mind as well. I don't know, it's so deep, everything. I just want to thank you all to everything that she said, because it's really powerful. And yeah, that's the thing that I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Leandro. And Jaja, let's hear from Tyler and then Andre, and then we do have a question in the chat.
Okay, Tyler?
Yes, so Leandro, thank you so much that you brought up a point that I've actually been wanting to make for a while. So there's this term, and it's I've heard it recently, and it's called the homosocial. And so it sounds kind of kinky, sounds kind of hot, but really what homosocial is it's same gender people who are like-minded, and they kind of get this pleasure from being around each other. So you have like the boys club, you know, you have, you know, things like the Girl Scouts, you know, it's both genders have it, but where the homosocial becomes toxic is that a lot of times men use this homosocial environment to create, you know, violence against people, or to or to make women seem like they're just like objects, you know, they objectify people. And so, you know, in this homosocial arena, it can oftentimes be very homoerotic. And we see that on TikTok a lot. You know, there's a lot of these straight men who use homoeroticism as clout, you know, to gain followers, to gain you know, power and within the social media realm. But then as soon as they're off social media, you know, they're out there talking about their girlfriends, their, you know, girls and things like that. And so that's another form of toxic masculinity that we don't really discuss about, because, you know, traditionally when we think about homosexuality, we think of it as women. You know, women are always grouped together. We call them hens. You know, there's an old term of like women are hens because they're always like clicking together, you know, and stuff like that. But there's really a masculine aspect to it. And it's very dangerous because they are in these circles where there is no one challenging them. There is no one critiquing them. There is no one saying, hey, let's change this, you know? And so that's why it's so important that we do have diversity. And I think it's why we have such a great panel today, is because we have such a diverse panel of people to discuss how toxic masculinity is in all different aspects of our lives.
Yeah. And Andre, you had something to add?
Yes, I did, but let's just move to the question in the chat, if you don't mind.
Okay, thanks, Andre. Mariam has a question. Has anyone ever faced these toxic masculinity traits within their work environment? Like, how do you deal with it?
Do you mind if I jump in on this real quick?
Sure.
All right, so like I mentioned before, I spent 6 years in the military. And that is, for me as a toxic individual, that is a very toxic environment. I mentioned to you about what JC referred to as code switching, and I had to do a lot of that in the military. Now, when I speak now on a normal occasion, this is how I sound. When I'm talking to my friends, it's a completely different thing. Because we can't talk like how we talked before, we have talked like this. No, you guys probably didn't understand the word that I just said. And the thing is, if I speak like this to my friends, the question is, you're gay, why you sound so? And majority of my friends were in the military. So these were some of the stuff that I had to deal with in the military. And it is even amazing that even going to school and learning and trying to better yourself is seen as, you would think, a positive move, but in the military, in the Jamaican military, it is not. And one of the reasons for it, because the military is such an old, like really old establishment, if you want to call it that, and it's set in its ways. So for me, as toxic as I am and as masculine as I think I am, I had to deal with a lot of toxic masculinity in the military. And like I said, code switching was how I dealt with it. Anyone outside of the military, this is who I am. Once me I deal with the man in the military, that becomes somebody else, somebody who's much rougher and, beer drinking, because I personally don't like beer. I like sweet, fruity drinks myself. But yeah.
Nice. Do we have any other questions from the chat?
Not yet, but I do see that Robin and Melissa have their hands up.
Oh, I have, regarding Miriam's question and toxic masculinity traits in the workplace. Yes, in a word. I was a journalist before I was a therapist, as I mentioned, and it's so interesting to see how the gender stereotypes varied in both of these careers that I've now had, where when I was a journalist, I feel like people took me less seriously because I was a woman. And now as a therapist, I feel like people take me more seriously because I am a woman. And I think that's because a lot of the emotional labor is often dealt to women. A lot of the clients that I see both at the assisted living facility and in my private practice are more likely to come to me than to my male colleague, because they think I'll be more empathetic, and they think I'll, devote a certain level of care that maybe my male colleague won't be able to, which is false. We actually both went to the same school, we were in the same classes, we trained the same way. So there's no reason that he couldn't do as good a job as I could. It's just that they see a male and they think he's not going to be as emotional, he's not going to hear me, he's whatever the case may be. That's toxic masculinity at work.
Wow. That's really, and I never even thought about that, and that's really deep. And I'm sorry, we had another hand raised. I can't see who it is. Is it Robin?
Yes.
Yeah, I was actually gonna touch on what Melissa just said. Like, when I had internships in the past, I would almost hope that my supervisor was a woman. And mine is not so much based on the stereotype that, a woman is gonna listen more, but it has actually been my experience that when my supervisor was a woman versus when my supervisor was a man, they were more willing to listen to what I had to say. I didn't have to fight to speak up so much. That was the experience I had. And I think that stems a lot from the type of society that there is here in the Bahamas and like in the Caribbean as a whole, where it's just like, if you see a man, like he automatically has more authority regardless of his position in the company. That's like what tends to happen. So I would like actively hope, like, oh my God, I hope I have a supervisor that's gonna like actually, like hear what I have to say. And then I had like I had the opposite experience at QC actually. Like I was on the e-board for a few clubs, and we would do work with different departments. And I would actually find that regardless of gender, the supervisors would, they're really helpful with students, but more often than not, they're more willing to hear what a male counterpart would have to say versus what I would have to say. Like we would be saying the exact same thing, but if a male counterpart said the same thing, then, it's more likely they would hear it from them. And I think that like stems from the idea that, men have like this authority, and because toxic masculinity doesn't just affect men, it also affects the way that we think as women. Like we see men in this light where they have more authority, and that, what they say holds a little bit more power. So like even as a woman, like I've experienced the effects of toxic masculinity in the workplace.
Yes, and that's important. Actually, that's one thing as we wrap up Q&A that I wanted to touch on too. So today's event was really centered on a more, I guess, masculine experience. And this is actually the first in a series of investigations of toxic masculinity We'll also have one centered around the female experience called the Trait of Toxic Masculinity. So I hope everyone, keeps an eye out and follows us and keeps with us to see how we go on to explore these topics and how we grow. I want to give a shout out to everyone that signed up and participated today. Thank you so much to all of my panelists. You guys are amazing. And I really appreciate, especially the students for weighing in, because it requires a vulnerable state to put yourself in front of your peers and divulge, certain things in your thought processes. So thank you all so very much. My company is Connect Commune, and you can find us at connectcommune.org. And for all the CUNY students, or for any students in attendance, if you want to experience a non-toxic work environment, we will be looking for volunteers soon. So you can email us if there's something specific that you want that you can bring. You can email us at info@connectcommune.org, or you can just stay tuned on our website to see the announcements then. JC?
All right. Thank you, everyone, for, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Again, I want to thank Jaja McQueen from Connect Commune and all of our panelists today and everyone who participated in the questions and answers portion. I would also like to thank again LaGuardia Community College and the New York City Council through the offices of Daniel Drum in District 25 and Speaker Corey Johnson for their continued and generous support. We have a special treat for you.
I'm sorry, JC?
Yes.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because before that special treat, I just wanted to leave everyone with this parting thought. How do we protect future generations from toxic societal standards? And how do we affect and influence the changes in those standards? So take that away from this panel, and back to you, JC.
And I think that's a perfect segue into our special treat, which is an acoustic performance by one of our panelists. And he's an activist, right? And a recording artist. Aniello will take us out with an acoustic version of his new single, Stand Up.
Yay. I didn't realize he was doing it acoustic, hey.
And I wrote Stand Up exactly kind of about taking all of these things we spoke about and standing up to them, standing up to who we are. And during sound check, JC and I spoke about, within our community, just writing our story. I think, this is what the song's about. It's about standing up and we're creating our own story, and we need to rewrite, what people think our story should be, because we're in charge of writing them. So I think we need to just continue to stand up, write our story, and, support each other and stay strong. So this is Stand Up. Don't walk alone, but to the sky. You're asking questions and reasons why. They build you up and tear you down, but don't give up. Get off the ground and stand up. You're all right. Oh, we're gonna win this fight. Just stand up. Don't lose sight. Oh, we're gonna be alright. Now listen up. Don't look away. Inside we're
amazing. Where's my lighter?
All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And I did drop in the chat, oh my God, I did drop in the chat the flyer for our next event, which I hope you can attend. And that's a panel discussion called Transforming Feminism on March 24th. If you need details before we start fully advertising, please reach out to me directly and I'll drop my email address in the chat as well. Thank you again, everyone, and please join us soon.